My name is Annette Thacker-Bartlett, and I am with the OSSE Division of Elementary, Secondary, and Specialized Education. And today I will be joined by Ms. Kathy Ash from the OSSE Division of Data Assessment and Research. Today in our webinar, we are going to talk briefly about last-minute preparations for this summer's extended school year program, which may or may not be applicable to some of you. Then we will dive into things that you need to do now to prepare for next school year. Then we will have a short training on password reset for SEDS accounts, and then a short training on how to correctly log services in SEDS. This information will be important for you to provide to your service providers. And we will conclude the webinar with announcements and reminders. Let's start with brief reminders about the impending ESY program this summer. As always, non-publics and LEAs, you need to work together when it comes to making decisions for a student. I recognize that several of you may be from non-public programs that are 11 or 12-month programs, and in those cases, most of your students are probably not eligible for ESY as the break in the school year is very short. But remember, you do have to consider for every student whether or not they need services over that summer break, whether it's 1 month, 3 months, or 1 week long, and document that you considered this in every student's IEP. The current status of every student's IEP right now with regards to ESY, that yes or no question of as to whether or not they're eligible, needs to be accurate. This is what OSSE is depending on to take stock of the ESY needs for this summer. If it is not accurate, if you need to change it from yes to no or no to yes, please amend the IEP as soon as possible. Also, please be sure that if you do have an ESY program, your calendar and your bell times are updated and accurate in TOTE. Additionally, sometimes a student might go to a different location for ESY, so be sure that that information has been shared through TOTE as well, and submit all of your transportation requests. At this point in time, the Transportation Department has already begun planning their bus routes and transportation for extended school year. So in the case that your student's IEP is going to change and it's going to affect transportation needs during the ESY program, you need to immediately alert the TOTE team so that they can ensure that the transportation is all set up for the start of ESY. And this is for students who are having a last-minute change to their status for ESY transportation. You need to go ahead and make that amendment in the IEP and finalize it, and go ahead and make the transportation request in TOTE, just as you would several months ago if you were setting this up. But then one additional step is to call the TOTE team at OSSE and alert them this last-minute change for ESY transportation has been made. Whether you are adding transportation for ESY or taking it away, any change at this point you need to call OSSE, as well as do the documentation in SEDS and TOTE. And as always, if you have questions throughout the webinar, please just type them in the question chat box and we will do our best to address them as we go along. We will stay on the line afterward for a few minutes as well. If you have students that are participating in ESY, within their IEP, you should have already filled out their ESY goal and denoted if any services need to take place. Now remember, you don't have to provide during ESY all of the same services that you provided during the school year. Rather, you should just pick and choose those particular skills that they need to work on and only the services necessary to keep them making progress on those skills, just enough so they don't backslide really far when it comes time to come back to school next school year. Here's a snapshot within SEDS of where you would denote why you are amending the IEP if it happens to be for ESY. Those of you on this webinar are probably fairly experienced SEDS users, but please keep in mind that some of your staff members or case managers or those that are writing the IEPs or amending the IEPs may be less familiar, and so please pass this information along to them and provide any training as needed. And as a reminder, you can amend the IEP without having a meeting if it's for something like this. However, if the parent does request a meeting, the IEP team must get together. That concludes the announcements for ESY. Now let's talk about next school year, which will be here before you know it. Right now, it is the end of the school year for many of you. Some of you, your programs will extend a little bit further into the summer, but either way, I hope all of you are looking forward to a nice summer break. Before the school year ends, please take care of these housekeeping items. You, as the non-public SEDS point of contact, have an important responsibility to make sure these things happen, whether or not it's you doing them or you're coordinating with a colleague or reaching out to the LEA. These things need to be taken care of. This includes letting us know your school year calendar for next year. We need to know when your school is starting and ending, any holidays, any days where students should not show up, and we need to know the bell schedules so that students receiving transportation will be dropped off at the right time. So please reach out to OSSE, and also you need to work with each LEA to make sure that they know your campus. A lot of LEAs in DC have students scattered across several different non-public programs, and they have to keep track of all those different non-public programs, calendars and start time and end time and bell schedule and holidays and all of that. So please help them out, reach out to them, provide them this information so they can use it for planning purposes and also so they can input it into the correct OSSE data system. Also, if you have IEPs that are going to expire over the summer, please plan in advance for those and have the meeting held before any summer break may happen. Same goes for reevaluations. If there's students whose reevaluation is going to come due towards the beginning of the school year, you probably want to plan ahead over the summer to start gathering the information needed and conducting assessments, if applicable, for those students so that you have the information you need when it comes time to finalize the reevaluation. For those of you here today that may be shifting in your role for next school year, maybe you're leaving your current school for a new job, maybe you are taking on a different responsibility at your program. In any case, if you will not be the non-public SEDS point of contact for next school year, then please help us out with the transition by letting Dr. Edgar Stewart know that there's going to be a change in your role, that it's going to be somebody else. Please send him a direct email. Also, please inform the new POC of any upcoming training opportunities. And you will know about training opportunities because you will receive it as part of an email to all of the non-public SEDS POCs. So that's another important reason why you need to notify Dr. Stewart of a change, because then he can put the new POCs on that email list and they will find out directly about any training opportunities coming up. Please also show the new POC, show them the SEDS resource site and the OSSE resource page where we archive these webinars with the slide deck and the recordings, and please help them get set up in the OSSE Support Tool. They can email osse.dartraining@dc.gov to request an account with the OSSE Support Tool, but it would be really great also if you sat down and showed them around and demonstrated to them how to use the OSSE Support Tool and when it's appropriate to submit a request for help to OSSE versus when it's appropriate to reach out to the LEA specifically about a student, if that's what the issue is with SEDS. And as a reminder, not only do you have to let Dr. Stewart know if you are switching roles, you are also the person that has to let Dr. Stewart know of other staff members that may be changing. So any of your non-public staff, and I'm sure you're going to have changes for the new school year, it just always happens, you need to email Dr. Stewart and let him know of any changes to any of your staff. And with that, with changes, of course, there are employees who leave your program that might still have access to SEDS, which then becomes a violation of privacy rules, of privacy laws, if an employee who is no longer at your school can still log into SEDS and have access to those sensitive student records. You, as the non-public SEDS point of contact, have a specific responsibility to make sure that those employees who have left your program, that they are inactivated in their SEDS account so that they no longer have access. And so what you need to do is you need to reach out to each LEA that that staff member, that ex-staff member that they used to have access to certain students, reach out to each LEA and let them know, hey, this person is no longer with us, so that they can ensure that that this ex-staff member cannot have access to their students. Should also let OSSE know to inactivate their account, their SEDS aggregate account as a whole, and you can do that by submitting a ticket to the OSSE Support Tool. Transportation requests for the new school year. It's a big deal, and it takes a lot of time and work for the transportation team here at OSSE to set up bus routes and schedules for hundreds of kids going to hundreds of different places. So you need to submit your transportation requests as soon as possible for next school year, as soon as you know the status. For students that are already enrolled, the students that are enrolled in the LEA right now, and the students that you have, you are the ones that know what their eligibility status is on the IEP with regards to whether or not they qualify for school year transportation. And if they do qualify for school year transportation and it's not going to change for next school year, if you're not going to amend that, please reach out to that student's LEA, work together with them to make sure that transportation request form gets submitted in tote by June 5th. Sometimes when the IEP is filled out, this section of the transportation page is skipped over. It is very important to the OSSE transportation team to know if there's any special needs during transportation, if there's a medical condition, if you need any kind of specialized equipment or a certain type of aid on the bus. OSSE needs to know that so that they can plan ahead. So please train your staff members that when they are filling out the IEP section on transportation, that they definitely consider if there's any special needs and document that. And then this information will feed over to TOTE and allow the TOTE team to set that up. And please include this information on the transportation request form in TOTE as well. Those of you here today, you may be the person that logs into TOTE and actually inputs information, or you just may be a person who provides that information to somebody else who puts the request in TOTE. Either way, you need to make sure it happens. Let's talk about a unique situation that could be happening to some of your students right now. Here is a case scenario. There's an 8th grade student who is enrolled in a DC charter school, but he attends your non-public program at your campus. However, the charter school only serves grades K through 8, and this student is about to finish 8th grade. Now, the student's parent might not even be thinking about this, because if your program goes all the way through high school, it's possible that the student would continue on with your program. And again, that's always something that has to be reevaluated at least once a year if the placement is appropriate. But in the meantime, while the student is with your program and the parent is thinking, oh, my kid's going to keep going to this program, in the meantime, they're going to get kicked out of their charter school that they are enrolled in because it only goes up through 8th grade. Now, there needs to be a new LEA in DC that enrolls the student, because they have to be enrolled in an LEA that has the grade that they are in order to continue with your non-public program. They can't be just loose floating out there, not connected to any LEA. So it is the LEA's responsibility to notify the parent 90 days ahead of the end of the school year. And hopefully the LEAs have done this for your students in this situation. However, I'm asking you today to identify those students in this situation and work together with the LEA. Reach out to the LEA, reach out to the parent, and make sure this has happened. Just double check, because it could get really complicated for you if it does not happen, if the student is not enrolled smoothly into a new LEA. So again, the LEA is responsible to notify the parent, but we ask you, because you see the student and the parent more frequently, we ask you to help us out, make sure this transition is happening. And in order to assist the LEAs in complying with that 90-day notification requirement, there is a template they can use to notify parents. So I just want you to alert you to this resource available, even though, again, the LEA is responsible to provide this notification, but we're asking you to step up and coordinate, reach out to the LEA and the parent, make sure this is all happening. The student gets enrolled in a new LEA. Now I want to tell you about a new initiative coming out of the Office of the State Superintendent from our State Superintendent herself. We have just kicked off a new initiative called the Start of School Initiative. And this is for LEAs, but I wanted to tell you about it today because some of the things that we are doing for this also could be really helpful for you and your role, not just for the LEAs that we are supporting at the beginning of the school year. So what's happened in past school years as the beginning of the school year becomes this time of chaos and so many students transferring to new schools, it's hard to get the records sent over to those schools in time. And you actually might have experienced not being able to see a student in SEDS. That's a result of the LEA not being able to get the kids' records, not getting them enrolled correctly or something, and then it affects your ability to serve the student as well. So by OSSE supporting the LEAs in a smooth start of school year, it also will allow you to more fully do your work in serving our DC students. So the initiative that we're doing with the LEAs, the goal of this is to take the burden off of LEAs as much as possible so they can just focus on serving students and families. We are being very specific and intentional about what we ask from LEAs, what information we ask them to give to us, what we ask them to do during this time. We're trying to reduce that number of requests and the administrative burden. We are trying to increase and improve our communications with schools and coordinate with them and support them. We also have come up with a number of new resources and tools to help them in problem solving sometimes when these issues come up where a kid is not getting their bus ride or they're not getting enrolled correctly or they're not showing up in SEDS. And we're working on enhancing the responsiveness of our staff as well. So let me just dig a little deeper and give you some examples of how we are working on this. These are the 5 main areas where OSSE is working really hard to come up with a plan and has come up with a plan for each area to support LEAs. Some of these do not apply to you at all, but some of them do. For example, getting a student access to transportation and having that set up by the first day of school, that does affect a lot of your students. Also, you use the OSSE Support Tool, and so we are working to make the OSSE Support Tool a better way for you to receive assistance from OSSE. So let's talk about transportation for a minute. We have several new resources and an action plan to make sure that LEAs can start with access to accurate student rosters. We're going to be reaching out to those LEAs to support them and help them get those transportation requests put in on time so that the student gets a bus ride on the first day of school. And this applies to your students as well. We are also working on simplifying the interface for the OSSE Support Tool and have it provide automated notifications so that you know the status of your ticket. We're also going to set up a phone line in office hours, as well as increase the OSSE staff, numbers of staff that are in the tool responding to the tickets. We're also going to provide a lot of new trainings and resources for LEAs. In some cases, these trainings or resources might also apply to you as a non-public SEDS point of contact. And if that is the case, we will definitely alert you through an email to our list of non-public SEDS POCs, letting you know if there's a new resource or training available that also applies to you. So I just wanted to let you know about this initiative and also let you know there is a website, and we can send you I'll send you the link to the Start of School website in the chat box a little bit later during the webinar. But again, this Start of School initiative is primarily targeted at supporting LEAs, but as a byproduct, it also can help support you in some of the areas that are relevant as you serve students with disabilities. So feel free to explore the resources here, and you can ignore the ones that don't apply and hopefully get some use out of the ones that do apply. And with that said, I am now going to turn the time over to my colleague, Ms. Kathy Ash, who is going to provide some very important training on how your staff can reset their own passwords when they're locked out. And now this information you're about to hear, even though it's pretty basic and you might already know it, you'd be surprised at the number of tickets we get in the OSSE Support Tool where a staff member has locked themselves out of their SEDS aggregate account, and you, as the SEDS POC, have to reach out to OSSE to ask us to unlock it, because you're not able to unlock it. And it's really clogging up the OSSE Support Tool with a lot of requests that we shouldn't have to receive, because you should be able to train your staff on some very basic steps on how they can reset their own password before they lock themselves out. So what we're about to show you here, please plan to take this information and share it with your staff to make sure they have everything in place to be able to reset their own password in case they forget it before they log out. And with that, I'm turning it over to Miss Kathy.
Awesome. Thank you, Annette. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As Annette shared, I'm going to be talking to you about password reset for SEDS accounts, as well as login related service provision in SEDS. And then I'll share with you some announcements and reminders. So as most of you know, all SEDS users have the ability to reset their own password without any assistance from OSSE. Now, you can enable this feature by updating 2 items on the My Info page in SEDS, and we have a screenshot of where that's located on the aggregate page. And then the other item is to set up a security question. So after you type your current email address, remember you have to use the email address that we use to set up your account. After you type that in, you want to make sure that you click the Update the Database to save all the information on the page. Then you will select Set My Forgotten Password Question to set up your own security question. The good thing is you can customize your security questions. After you've done that, you want to click Update Questions and Return to save the question. You want to remember the answer to the question, though. Now, whenever you attempt to log into SEDS, you utilize the Forgot Your Password feature to avoid getting locked up. Because as some of you may have experienced, after 5 times with the incorrect password, you will be locked out, and then that will require OSSE to unlock the access. So you can proactively change your password whenever you're logged into SEDS with your current password. So here's where, on the screen, here's where you can enter your current password, and then at the bottom you enter your new password, and then you re-enter it to verify the accuracy. If there are any questions, please put them in the chat box. Now, logging related service provision in SEDS. The steps for logging and verifying the services is anytime a related service provider provides a service to a student or even attempts to provide a service, it must be documented in SEDS in the order that I'm going to share with you, as opposed to the order that's listed under available wizards on the wizards page. So the first step is you create the service log using Logging Wizard. And you are to do that within 5 business days of each session. The next step would be to generate the service tracker. Now with this, the LEA determines how often it's done. However, weekly is recommended. And the third step, of course, is you complete the progress report at the end of each progress reporting period. You don't want to wait until the next progress report to complete the previous one. You want to really work to complete them at the end of the progress reporting period. Now, to create a delivered service log, you must always ensure that the related service providers know how to log a service in SEDS, because the incorrect logs could affect monitoring and compliance, the Medicaid billing, the Related Services Management Report, which is a new report in CLIC, and also it could affect your service trackers. Here we provided a diagram or an example of what the service delivery and the service type should look like. We also encourage you to type notes, and this is for easy reference later. In addition, the notes will appear on the service tracker and in the Related Services Management Report. The other thing that we want to make sure we emphasize is with respect to the group size, you never put 0 for group size when a service is delivered. You never put a 0 there. Now, when a service is scheduled, but it is missed, the related service provider you must still create a log to reflect the missed session. And again, an incorrect service delivery status, types, or duration will affect the service tracker. It will also affect the Related Service Management Report, monitoring and compliance, and the Medicaid billing. Again, we have provided you with what this would look like on the service log screen. So again, the attempted is the provider was available and the student was absent or unavailable. In this case, the student was absent. For the duration of service, you never put 0 minutes for a missed service log. You never put 0 minutes for a missed service log. However, for group size, unlike when there's a delivered and direct service, you always put 0 when there is a missed service. You always put a 0 when there's a missed service. Again, we encourage you to type notes in the comment section about why the session was missed, and this is for documentation purposes. And again, these comments will appear on the service tracker and the Related Services Management Report. Now, to confirm a service log entry. Once a service log is saved, the provider has one more chance to verify that the content is correct prior to the final submission. If by chance an incorrect log is submitted, the provider must ask the LEA SEDS POC to delete the incorrect log as soon as possible, and then create the correct log to replace it. So again, on this screen, you see the services that were logged, you see the notes, you see the areas that were covered and assessed, and here you want to click the button that says, no, allow me to correct this information before you save this service log. If there are no corrections and you agree to everything on the log, then of course you click yes, log this service. Now, the Related Services Management Report. This is the new report in CLIC, the one that was in SEDS, went sunset on May 1st. Now, this report compares the amount of time a related service is prescribed on a student's IEP to the amount of time that the service is actually provided. The report is based on data that was entered by the service provider via the service logging wizard in SEDS, which is why it's very important to make sure that information is accurate, because whatever is entered in SEDS will be transferred to the Related Services Management Report. And we also encourage the non-public SEDS POCs to work directly with the LEA SEDS POCs to access relevant related service data and reports from this new Related Service Management Report in CLIC. Reports by school campus are easily downloadable into PDF or Excel format. So work directly with the LEA SE POCs to access the relevant related service data and reports for the services that were logged by the related service provider. Now I'm going to share some announcements and reminders with you before we wrap up the webinar. And again, we encourage you to put your questions in the chat box and we will respond to them. So, non-public SEDS POCs are absolutely responsible for obtaining a SEDS aggregate account for themselves, as well as all relevant non-public staff. This is even if a staff member only needs to access one LEA in SEDS. A new student from a different LEA could potentially be placed at the non-public and added to the staff's caseload. As well, LEAs are not responsible for managing non-public SEDS accounts. So if you reach out to an LEA SE POC and they say we don't do that, they're absolutely right. They're not responsible for managing non-public SEDS account. They only manage access to specific students. They only manage non-public access to specific students. The non-public SEDS POCs should never ask the LEA to create a SEDS account for a non-public staff member. Whenever there's an instance or an occurrence like that, the non-public SEDS POC should always use the OSSE Support Tool for this request. And you want to make a separate request for each staff member. You should reach out to the LEAs for access to specific students after the non-public staff member has an account that's been set up by OSSE. So again, the non-public SEDS POC should never ask the LEA to create a SEDS account for a non-public staff member. OSSE is not in a position to grant access to specific students within an LEA SEDS site for non-publics. However, upon request by the non-public SEDS SE POC, the LEA SE POC is responsible for providing student access to non-public staff members. And again, this is for staff members who already have aggregate accounts set up by OSSE, including access to all of the LEAs that have students placed in your non-public program. Student level issues in the OSSE Support Tool. For issues that affect specific students, do not use the OSSE Support Tool. The non-public SEDS POC should contact the special education point of contact directly to request assistance. That is, you should contact the LEA special education point of contact directly to request assistance. If the issue remains unresolved, that is when it is the LEA SE POC's responsibility to submit a ticket to the OSSE Support Tool. Now, for ticket submissions, the non-public SEDS POCs, whenever you're submitting a ticket, you should always and only select non-public as the issue type. You will use the subcategory menu to select the type of request you need assistance with. And there's a drop-down menu that lists several subcategories that you can choose from. But again, the issue type should always be non-public. There are a host of OSSE data system trainings. OSSE uses the Data System Training Team site to archive recordings and materials from past trainings for non-public SEDS POCs. For example, the training that we offered to non-public POCs in March would be located on this site, and we've provided the URL for you. Also, the SEDS resource site continues to archive training and technical assistance resources for non-public SEDS POCs. And you can access the SEDS resource site from your SEDS page. Okay, so we're going to, we're not going to do the, we're actually going to do the survey evaluation. These are some live poll questions. If you would please respond to them. I had a positive experience in this training. We'll give you a couple seconds to respond to this. Okay, thank you so much for your responses. Overall, this was an effective training. Did you find this training to be very helpful, although there were quite a few things that we know you're familiar with? We really like your feedback. It helps us in planning future trainings for you. Thank you for your responses there. Now, please rate the overall course content and training materials. Couple more seconds. Thank you all for responding. Please rate the presentation of print materials by the trainer. Were you able to hear, or did you understand the information that was communicated? What were the strengths of this session? This is where you get to type your answer in the chat box. How could we improve this session? The time, the location, the materials that we use, the resources that were provided. There were a couple documents uploaded so that you could have access to them during the webinar. Also the training format. What were the strengths? And how could this session be improved? A couple more seconds. Thank you all for responding. Okay, thank you. What additional training or professional development do you need to strengthen your practice? Again, what additional trainings could we offer or professional development to strengthen your practice, your role? Please type your answer in the chat box. We really appreciate your feedback with this survey. Thank you so much again for your feedback. And this concludes the webinar. We will be online for a few more minutes to answer any questions that you might have. So again, please type your questions in the chat box. Thank you for completing the survey, and we will talk with you soon. Thanks again, and have a great holiday weekend.